Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to it Wednesday night. It is the Earthmaster out here. October 2nd, 2024 is the date. 10:24 p.m. here, California time, local time here where I'm at. Latest activity, a 1.6 here in California, also a 3.2 showing up here in the Kermadec Trench area, New Zealand region. Getting a little bit of amplification here across this plate boundary. A lot of newer activity here southward following that 4.7 that stirred up earlier today. So things starting to work its way down here across the plate boundary. All right, let's check out California activity here real quick. I want to show you guys, first of all, let's start up in the north here in the Pacific Northwest, where we've seen a handful of earthquakes out here up and down the Juan de Fuca plate, and one earthquake right smack dab on the Cascadia fold area, the mega thrust zone here. It's a fold and thrust belt. 2.1 coming in here this earlier this afternoon, about 11 miles deep here. This is in the locked area of the Cascadia subduction zone. Now, over the past week or so, we've seen a large amount of tremor taking place here, roughly about the central coast here of Oregon. Let me bring up the tremor map here tonight. I forgot to include that. Let's go over here to the tremor map, see what we have. Still seeing a fairly large amount of tremor here across the central Oregon coast area. That is roughly around the south central area of the Cascadia subduction zone. And over the past week, it's been fairly consistent here in this same area. We're talking about 1,747 epicenters of tremor, mainly across this area of Oregon. Now, this region here is pretty much playing catch up. And the reason why I say that is because areas north here and areas south into Northern California have seen a large amount of tremor over the past few months. This area absent of tremor up until about 10 days or so ago. So we're filling in, which is probably not a good idea because we're adding further strain up here across the Cascadia subduction zone. But that is what happens here. It's a whole process here of the Cascadia. It builds up strain here by subducting the Juan de Fuca plate here, subducting underneath the North American plate, and the tremor activity is just a sign there down into some of the deeper regions, about 35, 45 kilometers underneath this area, below. Downstream from the locked area. Locked area is upstream. So when we're seeing all that tremor activity, that is adding further strain up here across the Cascadia subduction zone. Just getting a little hint of that with this earthquake up there today. So, this is another lurking danger out here that's very possible. We could see that strike out here soon. And it's been documented here that it's capable of producing at least a 9.0 earthquake upon full rupture. And I say at least because, it can be higher. And we've also seen partial ruptures out here, just the southern end. And that could be up to an 8.4, Northern California, Southern Oregon. There's also a little bit of chat here recently about a segment up here across just west of Seattle that could fragment as well in terms of seeing a partial rupture. So, got to watch that. 1700, that's a long time ago. And what happened about in 1700, 320-something years ago, that was also the last time we seen a large earthquake on the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. So, a little interesting, to say the least there. I'll show you guys some specifics on that here in a little bit. So, a couple earthquakes out here in the fracture zones. That adding some further strain in itself as well across the entirety of the Cascadia. Northern California, pretty quiet. Really not too concerned here across the area of the Bay region. Got a couple smaller earthquakes here in the last 24 hours, but really nothing big. A little bit of movement here on the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. One more earthquake here early this morning around the Avenal area. This is a region that's seen that the 4-pointer here yesterday, along with the 3.4 and a couple other earthquakes there in a little seismic swarm around the western edge here of the San Joaquin Valley. Southern California here. Some of these regions here are an area to watch. Obviously, the Bakersfield region, Ridgecrest, We got a little bit more activity here across the Malibu area this morning. A couple twos stirring up there. Also, the Puente Hills thrust fault. Seeing a little bit of earthquake activity today with a 1.4. Rancho Palos Verdes area, 1.7. Now, there is a fault system that does run through here. You know, these poor folks down here have been dealing with quite a bit of landslide activity and unfortunate damages to homes here. I was just down here a few days ago investigating the cause of that, and if you haven't checked it out, it's up on the channel. There is a fault system that runs through there as well in the Rancho Palos Verdes area. That's going to be this fault right here, the Cabrillo fault. Fairly lengthy fault that runs up here around the top area of the hills. And also you got the Palos Verdes fault zone. Fairly lengthy, and there's some chat here that fault system there, very capable of producing a 7.5 earthquake. And something like that around this area would not be good. They're already dealing with some landslides out there over the last, it's been ongoing for a little while. I explained it a little bit more in my update video about this area. It's a few videos back, so you'll have to check that out. I'm not going to go into that tonight. But a little bit of earthquake activity there right now, 1.7. Further out and about here, offshore of San Diego, the trough zone out here. This is a little trough area. Seen a 2.0 earlier this afternoon as well. San Diego has been relatively quiet, but I'm going to have to watch that. That may start filling in here across various areas of these fault systems. Now, I've been chatting a lot about watching this area, seeing this, broad scale event here recently, and I say it in all of my videos here recently because I feel like something is coming. And when we have these elevated events out here, it makes sense here that the likelihood of seeing a larger earthquake exists, right? It makes sense. A lot of people tend to believe that, well, these earthquakes are preventing the big one from happening. It's good that we see these little ones, and that is not good. If anything, over the broad scale area that we've seen here recently, that's a bad sign because we're looking at elevated activity here recently. I want to show you guys 2016 here. Now, this runs from a good portion of 2016. We had a decent earthquake swarm out here right on the Brawley seismic zone. And the Brawley seismic zone, let me show you guys here real quick so that you guys can see what I'm talking about, is an extension of fault boundary out here, plate boundary, I should say, that extends from the San Andreas Fault, the southern segment, and it connects it to the Imperial Fault down south. Now, it's a oblique spreading zone. There's a couple spreading centers in here, and it sees a lot of swarms on occasion here. And 2016, we had a significant amount of swarming taking place here in the Brawley seismic zone, and very close to the San Andreas Fault. I believe that was back in, that lasted for quite a while there. September, October, even into November a little bit. And that came awfully close here to the San Andreas Fault. And when it's that close there, that's pretty much in a what's the word I'm looking for? Domino effect, triggering zone here. This area, the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, has not seen any earthquake activity in over 300 years. And it's capable of producing an 8.1. So when you have this swarming out here, it created a little bit of panic. And I want to show you guys a couple articles here. This is from the LA Times that I screenshotted here. I'll provide you guys a link so you can check it out yourself here. But this is from 2016, and they're talking about the swarm of earthquakes that occurred there, and how this was only the third time since 1932 that the area had seen such an earthquake swarm. Pretty significant. We haven't really seen anything similar since. Now, if you read this right here, check this out. The swarm actually increased the likelihood of a much more larger quake in Southern California, at least temporarily. So when we see these elevated events out here, this is just an example. The elevated swarming activity we've seen back in 2016, the elevated swarming that we're seeing all around Southern California right now in the past couple months, it increases the likelihood of a larger earthquake. So according to, and this is straight from the USGS, the chances of a magnitude 7 or greater earthquake being triggered on the San Andreas Fault over the next 7 days was as high as 1 in 100 and as low as 1 in 3,000. So without the swarm, the average chance for an earthquake striking on any given week was about 1 in 6,000. So we doubled the possibility of seeing a larger earthquake, and that was put out by the USGS itself. So more earthquake activity, higher possibility of seeing something much bigger. And it's all over the place in Southern California. And right here, as seismic activity drops, the probability of having a large earthquake also decreases. Right there. Straight from the USGS. Now the San Andreas Fault here, southern segment. It's an interesting article. There's quite a bit there, so I'll leave you guys a link so you can check it out. I need to find out where the, let's see here. So they're saying a 7.8, but I think by now it's up to an 8.1. This was back in 2008, this article, but this whole article was back in 2016. So now they're stating that an 8.1 earthquake is potentially possible along that southern segment of the San Andreas Fault. Where did we go? Did I skip it? I know I had a, oh. Yeah. Check this out. So remember I mentioned the 1700 earthquake there, Cascadia? Look at when the last one happened on the San Andreas Fault, the southern segment. 1680. 20 years prior to the 9.0 earthquake there along the Cascadia. So we're looking at more than 330 years have passed since the big one. Check this out. The average interval of 150 to 200 years. So, you know, there's no thinking that this region is long overdue. It is overdue. So, and this article was put out in 2016 here. We haven't really seen any major earthquake swarm out here across the Brawley seismic zone, but the overall pattern out here across Southern California has been increasing across various areas in regards to elevated activity around the San Andreas Fault, specifically in this area around the southern branch. So, you know, you've seen it yourself. The USGS stated that the more likelihood of a large earthquake is going to happen when we're seeing these elevated events out here. So we got to be on guard, folks. Definitely have to be on guard out here. Today, 2.5 map and above is actually fairly active. Got about 7 earthquakes out here of various magnitudes across various locations out here. No major earthquake swarm out here for now. But, you know, don't let your guard down here. It's coming. A little bit of movement up into Washington as well, north of Yakima. Kind of an interesting area there, east of the Cascades. Of course, this area has seen actually I think it was outside of that area. To the southeast here, we've seen a little earthquake swarm out here. Earthquake swarm of about 176 earthquakes out here around a hazardous material waste landfill, is what I've been told. Nothing became of it, just a pretty decent earthquake swarm. Now we got a little earthquake activity west here, so this does look like just general plate stress out there in that area. Texas area, outside of Midland, getting in on some three-pointers out there today. Quite a bit of oil fields out here in this area of Texas. I'm sure maybe this is some newer areas that have been developed, just not showing up here on the map. But just literally feet to the west here, fracking operations, wastewater disposal ponds, you name it, earthquakes galore. earthquake potential galore, I should say. A lot of earthquakes out there across Texas recently, and all these areas that maybe haven't seen earthquakes yet, it's coming. A little swarm of activity here along the Middle America Trench. This is actually kind of interesting here over the last 24 hours. Couple fours up and down the plate boundary here over the last 7 days. Not a whole lot of larger scale activity, but getting some adjustment going on here. Mainly into somewhat of the deeper areas here of the Middle America Trench. We'll keep an eye on that. Far as anything major goes here, let's see what we got for worldwide activity. We got a little deeper activity here across the Vanuatu region. Typical clustering going on here across the Philippines southward. Slight swarming going on here across the Sumatra area. Really nothing major going on. And a little bit of movement north along this plate boundary with a 4.2. 5.0, fairly recent earthquake here, well off the coast of South Africa along the plate boundary here. Let me show you guys this plate boundary area. This is going to be on the Australia and the Africa plate here. So notice the arrows pointing away from each other. The general plate movement here is going to be a rift boundary, but there's some other fault systems in there as well. And yeah, that's just due south here of this area. A little plate boundary unzipping going on there. You can see the zipper pattern. Over time, of course, that's not going to happen instant. Otherwise, we could be talking about some issues going on here across the planet worldwide. So this happens over time, but yeah, eventually you build a new oceanic crust out there. Let's see here. What else we got? Hawaii? Anything major going on out there? Doesn't look like it. Let's go check it out here real quick, see what we got. Minimal movement at best here. A couple threes out here across the... this is kind of interesting here. A little bit of deeper activity underneath the Kilauea volcano. No major changes out there in terms of volcanic activity. Let me... I don't want to restore that. I just want to check out the USGS map here. I don't really care about all that. There we go. So let's check out the inflation here, deformation data across the area of Kilauea volcano, where we're at a little bit of inflation going on, but really nothing of any major interest out here. There's our most recent deflation event. That's a loss of magma from the summit of Kilauea off to the Middle East Rift Zone, where we've seen our most recent eruption here a week or so ago. And not that big of a deal. Nothing major going on there for now. Space weather activity, yeah, that's another story here. We got some interesting activity to look forward to here tomorrow night and possibly on Friday night as well. Talking about a G3 class storm. And that is a result from the X flare we've seen here yesterday. That was the X 7.1, 7.15 if you want to be specific here. The second strongest solar flare of this solar cycle. Pretty significant event, and it was Earth directed and associated with a somewhat of a partial CME. So that is headed in the Earth directed view, and they are calling for a G3 class storm. Not tonight. Not here tonight for Wednesday night. I know it's probably Thursday morning for some of the folks out there, but here in California, it's still Wednesday night. Thursday night, talking about a decent chance for some storming here. Now, the forecast here, this is a forecast for KP index of 6. Now, could be stronger. Talking about KP index around G3 class storm up around the 7 range. So, tomorrow night's going to be interesting, and also maybe potentially on Friday night as well. This could be quite the sight. Now, not a large amount of plasma was shut off, but you know, pretty quick, and a decent amount of plasma in the Earth-directed view. So we should see some auroras out there tomorrow night. Fairly low on the latitude scale as well. 35% chance for X-flare activity here over the next couple days. 75% for M-flare. C-flare, 99% chance. And We do have a number of sunspots out here that are looking a little strong in terms of complexity. This is the area that shot off the X flare here yesterday, directly facing Earth. Still a little bit of complexity here within the this western core area. Overall, though, the majority of these are looking somewhat complex. Separation of the core here, not really concerned about that. Massive sunspot out here across the northeastern quadrant of the sun. Going to have to watch that. That's looking a little creepy looking in terms of a Halloween. Maybe we'll see well, Halloween's a little ways down the road, but that's a large sunspot area. So we got this region down here, massive area up here in the northeastern quadrant. That's 3848, and that is a beta delta structure. It doesn't show whether it's growing or declining or stable, but to me it looks fairly stable right now, but we'll definitely watch that. That's been a source here of many far side explosions here recently. Yeah, so watch for tomorrow night, maybe on Friday night as well, for some spectacular auroras. Goodness. All right, numerical models here. Now let's take a look here at the Gulf of Mexico, see what we got stirring up out there. Most of the weather models here have been trending with no significant development there in the Gulf of Mexico. You guys remember a couple days ago, we showed a strong hurricane entering into the area of Florida and venturing up inland into the areas that just got impacted here by the tropical system there, Helene. Devastating events out there, goodness. But folks are doing what they can to help everyone out. That is definitely a good thing. But right now, it shows no significant development there in the Gulf of Mexico. So hopefully it stays that way. There's a little bit of moisture funneling up here across Florida and limiting development, though. That's definitely a good thing. Keep that away from land. As far as any significant pattern changes out here, if only, if only I am not, it was 105 degrees today here in Northern California. So here's this is for Thursday. High pressure influence, above average temperatures there across Calofornia in the orange. That gets squashed out a little bit by a clipper low up into the Pacific Northwest. These lows are getting rather strong, but they're not going down here far enough to cool California down. So high pressure going to build back in across the majority of the western states out here, and they're going to cook back into the hundreds, I feel, out here across California again as we head into the weekend and early next week. After that, well, it's kind of hard to say. It's a ways out there. Can't really say with certainty if this is going to be accurate or not that far out. But I'm hoping for a pattern change because I'm a little tired of the heat out here. I'm just done with it. I'm so over it. Seismograph stations out there, calm, clear, quiet. Not a whole lot going on across the world seismos, but again, just be prepared, folks. There's some obvious signs that are pointing out here towards some impending larger movement. And I know it's not in the interest of fearmonger. I don't fearmonger. I'm just kind of pointing out some facts out here, but I know we have to bring about the information out here. And the USGS normally doesn't like to, state what potentially could be coming in terms of, all this recent activity. But that's why I kind of wanted to go back there on the article from 2016 and show, just show you guys the wording here from the USGS, stating that the chances there of a larger earthquake increased when they seen that swarm back in 2016. So if we're seeing elevated earthquake activity all around Southern California, not only just down here in the south, that would put the chances of seeing a larger event take place out here. and it's been amplified in many different areas. You're always hearing about a 3 here, a 4 there, a 5 there. It's not just in one area. It's all around the plate boundary. So that's a little scary in itself. That primarily is the leading factor that I believe is makes me think something bigger is going to happen out here. The lack of swarming down here is a little interesting. I mean, we haven't really seen any earthquake swarming down across this area of the plate boundary. So whether that's the key to watching the big one out here or not, who knows? I guess we'll see what happens. Have a good night, folks. We'll catch you guys back out here tomorrow, Thursday. I got to get a little sleep out here, so we'll see you guys a little bit later. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe out there and be prepared.